Hi, my name is Lily and welcome back to my channel, and it has been a while. So I haven't been around for a few months. I've been super duper busy with job applications and studying for work, but hopefully now I can come back properly. And the first thing I would like to do is to film a wrap up of most of the books that I read between March and August. This is a long time period, lots of books to get through. I won't be talking about every single book because that would be way too long, but I'm going to be talking about the highlights, the lowlights, basically any of the books from those months that I want to talk to you about. So stay tuned, I'll be trying to go through them as quickly as possible, but I will still try and give you enough information about all of them. Okay, so first up, I can't believe I haven't updated or done a wrap up since I read this book, because this feels like a lifetime ago and I'm honestly struggling to remember what I thought about it. But the first book I want to talk to you about that I read since we last spoke is House of Sky and Breath by Sarah J Maas. Can you tell I forgot the name? I was going to call it House of Earth and Blood, but it's not. That's the first book. So this is the second book in the Crescent City series, which is the new adult series by Sarah J Maas. Not new adult, just new book series for adults. So for those of you wondering, this is the first series of hers that was originally marketed as an adult series. A Court of Thorns and Roses is now considered an adult series as well, but was originally marketed as YA. But yeah, this is her first official, started out as an adult series. This is the second book. Can't tell you much about this book because it would be spoilers for the first book. I prefer this to the first book. So the first one I gave 3 stars. It is my least favourite Sarah J Maas book except for Tower of Dawn, and I reread it before I read this one, and I can confirm still second least favourite to Tower of Dawn. So this one was better. I found it a lot more readable. There was a lot less info dumping in this book. I found in the first book she info dumped so much at the beginning, it was really hard to follow. But this one, because the world's already established, there's not so much info dumping, and it did get significantly better. But it's still not great. I think I still gave it 3, maybe 4 stars. I found it a little bit boring at times. These books are very slow in comparison to her other books. I would say that the ACOTAR series is probably medium paced. Throne of Glass is quite fast paced at times. This one is super slow. Like, they're really chunky books and everything happens at the end of the book. The same thing happened in this book as in the first book. In the first book, everything happens at the end. Same here. But I will say the ending. No spoilers, but the ending. I have never reacted in the way I did to the ending of this book. I remember vividly I was folding laundry on my bed, I was listening to it in my headphones, I was getting towards the end, and it has this weird bit at the end where you're kind of wondering what's happening, like this sounds really weird, what's going on? And then the reveal, if you read the book you'll know what I'm talking about, but when a certain character says a certain thing to reveal something and you're like, oh my god, and you realise the implications for the third book, it's pretty damn exciting. So I will definitely be picking up the third book now because of what happens at the end of this book. I think if that ending hadn't happened, I probably wouldn't have picked up the third book unless I got it on a good deal. But yeah, so I think this was 3, maybe 4 stars. Okay, Sarah J Maas read. I don't think it's her best series, but I'm very, very excited for what's coming in book 3. Then on Scribd, I listened to the audiobooks of Wraith and Zenny by Rebecca Weatherspoon, which I will display here. These are books 1 and 2 in a duology, although they are the kind of romance novels where they are linked, where the characters know each other, but you don't need to have read both books, or the first book to understand the second book. So the first book follows Wraith. He is a nanny, and he is kind of trying to get out of the business, but then he gets offered this job for this beautiful woman looking after her children. She's a single mother, and she is a doctor, I think. This is all coming from my memory from when I read this ages ago. I cannot be bothered to look up all of these books I'm going to talk to you about, so if there's any inaccuracies, forgive me. And basically it is about him sort of discovering more about this woman and kind of falling in love with her, and her trying to resist falling in love with him because it's her nanny. And it is really cute, really sweet, quite steamy, and it's very short. So if you want something short, sweet, steamy, nothing too out there, then this is a good one to read. And then Zenny is about the mother in the first book. It is about her best friend who finds out that an estranged aunt has passed away, and that this aunt was actually secretly her biological mother and has left her entire fortune to her. So she has to go to this aunt's house, deal with the house, the fortune and everything else. But in the will, it was also said that one of her aunt's friends, who is a musician who she sort of tutored, should also get something, and that she wanted them to end up together. So they end up having this kind of whirlwind romance. Again, quite steamy, not as cute as the first book, but it had a lot of really interesting discussions in it, quite emotional at times, and both the main characters of this book are bisexual. So yeah, really, really good. I enjoyed that one as well. I think I preferred Rafe to Zenny just because it was more my vibe, but it's one of those where look up the tropes, read the descriptions, whichever one appeals to you more, feel free to read that or read them both. Then I listened to You Had Me at Hola by Alexis Daria. This again was through Scribd. This is another romance novel, and this is about two stars of an upcoming Netflix show kind of falling in love. And so they are both telenovela stars from various parts of the world. I can't specifically remember what countries they're from and they film in, but they're both pretty well known. And the male main character secretly has a son that he is hiding in his home country. And the reason he's hiding him is because he feels that there's a threat to him if he keeps him in America, and the public knows about him. So he lives with his grandparents back in their home country, which his father goes to visit on a regular basis. And then you have our female main character who, despite being a telenovela star, doesn't actually speak Spanish. And so she has to learn her lines kind of by ear, and so the two of them decide to practice together so that she can learn her lines and he can get to know her, and a romance ensues. This one was funny, it was sweet, it's just a bit bland. I was expecting a bit more drama, something a bit more exciting considering it's telenovela stars, but it was kind of regular. I didn't find it particularly exciting, and honestly you could have taken them out of the showbiz world, put them into a corporate environment, and it wouldn't have changed the story all that much. So yeah, it was an okay read. I enjoyed it, but it's not one I would rave about or highly recommend. Just pick it up if you're interested. Then on the recommendation from TikTok, I read The Wall of Winnipeg and Me by Mariana Zapata, and this is the book that's kind of put me off reading any more of her other books, because people have kind of told me if I didn't like this one, don't read the rest, and I didn't particularly like it. I did still give it 3 stars because I thought it was a good book, it just wasn't for me. This one is the story of, I believe he's an NFL player, some kind of sports ball player in America, but he is Canadian, and his citizenship is coming up for renewal, and he wants to kind of find a way to be able to stay for longer without having to worry about his visa. And so he then asks his assistant, who recently just quit, to marry him and have a fake wedding, a fake marriage, so that he can have his green card and stay and not have to worry about this anymore. And in exchange, he will give her a sum of money. They just have to stay married for a certain period of time. But she hates him, or that's what he thinks. But he's lucky, she agrees, and so she does this while also trying to build up her graphic design business, I think it is, on the side. And this is an incredibly slow burn, like torturously slow. And it's okay, but again, I just found it a bit boring, a bit too slow for me. It's a very long book for how slow it is, and I didn't find there was enough going on in between them like starting this fake marriage and actually falling in love. So it was okay. If you love a slow burn and a really slow burn, then this could be one for you. Then I decided to give Alexis Daria another shot, which was a lot like Adios, the sequel to You Had Me at Hola, which is again another romance novel where you can read it separately or read them in order, whatever is your preference. This was another 3-star read for me. It was okay, and I think I should have known I wasn't going to enjoy it, but people were hyping up her writing so much I thought maybe she'd convince me. But this is a second chance romance. It's about two people who grew up together in, I want to say Brooklyn? Some part of New York. They grew up together in some part of New York, and when he was 18 he left, cut off his parents, and he's now built this like gym empire, and now the girl is some kind of corporate role. I want to say she's in marketing or PR, something like that, and his gym group decides to hire her to be their sort of marketing expert for breaking into the New York business, and they have to meet. They fall in love again, or they decide to kind of see what happens between the two of them, but he is trying to keep it a secret from his parents that he is in town because he doesn't want to see them. Okay, wasn't in love with the characters. I kind of found them both a little bit annoying, and the story didn't make a lot of sense to me. So yeah, it was okay, didn't love it, but if this is your kind of thing, you will really enjoy it. Then we have my next physical read, which is The Secrets Act by Alison Weatherby. This I got from a book box, and I was kind of excited because I'd never heard of it before. But the reason I was excited is because this used to be one of my special interests. So this is set at Bletchley Park, which is where the code breakers were in World War II in the UK, where they were trying to break the code of the Enigma machine. So if you've seen, what is it called? The Imitation Game. If you've seen The Imitation Game, the story about Alan Turing, this is where he was based. This is where that all happened. And it's actually just down the road from me. I've been there. It's an amazing place to go and visit. And I was briefly obsessed with it as a young teenager. So I was very excited by this. This is a murder mystery set in Bletchley Park, and it follows two girls. We have Ellen and we have Pearl. So Pearl has kind of lived there for ages, and her mother has worked at Bletchley Park. So she is about 14, I think, at the start of the book, and is a runner. So she delivers the letters, delivers other things in Bletchley Park, all the top secret information. And then you have Ellen, who is a country girl who passes some kind of exam to get a job at Bletchley Park. And when she gets there, she meets Pearl and they become friends. But a mutual friend of theirs dies. It's said that it's an accident, but he is a very experienced motorbike rider, and they do not believe that he would have died in an accident like this, so they decide to start to investigate and discover some sinister secrets happening at Bletchley Park. It's about espionage, it's about spies, and then my other favourite thing about this, Ellen, one of our main characters, is autistic. It's not said on paper, but the author has expressed that she would be. It's just that at the time, that diagnosis did not exist, and especially not for girls. So yeah, it is really great. I loved Ellen and Pearl. They're both really, really good characters, really interesting to read about. I especially loved Ellen for obvious reasons. I really related to her. But yeah, it's pretty good, and I would highly recommend it if you love a YA thriller, YA mystery thriller. It's kind of slow at times, but it's very intriguing, and if you enjoy that kind of historical setting, I think it's really good. You can tell the amount of research that the author put into this book is just so high, and yeah, I would so recommend this if you love a YA mystery, because I think it's really well written, and I can't wait to see what else she comes up with. Then from that same book box, and actually in the same month, I received The Revelry by Catherine Webber. So this is a YA gothic atmospheric book. It's kind of a thriller, kind of not, kind of a horror, kind of not. It's very interesting. It's about this town where every year there's an event called The Revelry. And at The Revelry, a certain year group of the high school is invited to the revelry. They go, something happens, and it's never really spoken about afterwards. No one really knows what happens at the revelry, no one talks about it, but every year something happens and people's fortunes change. And this year, two best friends decide to sneak into the revelry that wasn't theirs, and while they're there, their fates seem to have been tied together so that when one succeeds, the other one fails. And this one follows the girl who seems to be on the failing side of things. Her best friend, who has come from very difficult circumstances, is starting to have success in life, but she feels as though every time her friend has a success, her life starts to fail. And she also meets this mysterious figure in the woods who she starts to make friends with, and it's kind of an exploration of what is the revelry, what happened at this revelry, because neither of the girls can remember, and are their fates truly tied? How can they break this curse between them? But it's also about how the curse affects their friendship. And it's a really powerful book about female friendship, about what happens in high schools and fortunes changing, and kind of how luck can change over time. And it's just so interesting. I really loved it. I was completely enthralled by it. If you love really atmospheric, gothic, eerie reads, this is one for you. Then we have Get a Life, Chloe Brown by Talia Hibbert. And yes, I know I'm so behind on this. I haven't read this, or I read this very late. So I actually read the third book in the series first, but now I'm reading the others. So this is the first book in the trilogy of the Brown sisters, and it follows Chloe Brown. Chloe is the highly strong, very put together of the three sisters, and so she decides to create this list of bad things she wants to do so she can experience life and get out more, as everyone's always telling her to do. And she ends up enlisting the superintendent of her building, Red, to help her do it, and obviously in that they fall in love. So it's good, it's fun, it's really funny. It's not my favourite. I do think it's my least favourite of the three Brown Sisters books, but it's still so good. I gave it 4 stars and I really, really enjoyed it. So if you love a rom-com that's kind of steamy and has a lot of interesting topics, then I would pick this one up, because it has the topic of because it talks about things like chronic illness, because Chloe Brown is chronically ill, but also we have Red, who was in an abusive relationship in the past, and it's quite interesting to see a book talking about men being in abusive relationships and being the abused. And so it's a very interesting emotional read, but still really funny. So if you're looking for that in your romances, then I would really recommend any Talia Hibbert book really, but especially this one. So straight after that, I read Take a Hint, Dani Brown, which is the second book in the trilogy and my last one that I needed to read. This is about the middle sister, Dani Brown, who is a student, or I think she's a PhD student at a university, and her friend Zaf. So Zaf is an ex-pro rugby player who quit playing rugby after his dad and brother died suddenly in an accident. He now works as a security guard at one of the buildings at Dani's university, and they've got this kind of strange friendship. He's known to be really like gruff and mean and horrible, but to Dani he is lovely. Basically, one day there is a fire alarm in the building and he goes to save Dani from the fire alarm and carries her out of the building, and people take pictures and film videos of him putting it on the internet, and that's how people find out who he is and how he used to be this ex-pro rugby player. And it hits the news, it gets really big, and he decides to take this opportunity to promote his charity, which he hadn't been using his name to promote before, and he asks Dani to pretend to be his girlfriend to help him promote his charity. They've been friends for years, but will it become more? Of course it will. This one is good, it's fun. This is a lot of people's favourite, but it's not my favourite. Eve Brown, the third one, is my favourite, but this one definitely is my second favourite. It's fun, it's cute, I love a Friends to Lovers book, and it's very steamy. But what I also liked was how they both accepted each other as they are, and they both process their own anxieties and issues separately. They don't lean on each other for it, which is good. And I really liked how she's a very focused person, very driven person, and likes to spend a lot of time doing her work and reading and focusing on it, and he doesn't try and change that. 10 out of 10, love that for her. Then Chloe Leese released another book in the Bergman Brothers Sisters, which is Everything for You, and this one follows, I think it's Oliver? So yes, I was right, this one follows Oliver, one of the youngest Bergman brothers. This is about his romance with his co-captain. His co-captain is a man named Gavin, who is a British soccer player who has kind of got too old to be in the leagues in the UK and has moved to America to play there, and he is the co-captain with him. So he's kind of in his 30s and Oliver is in his 20s, and it's like an enemies to lovers ish, but Gavin has always had the hots for Oliver. Oliver's always had a crush on Gavin, but thinks that he's horrible, basically, because he's always been mean to him, and they're forced to try and cooperate to lead the team. There's a mini prank war. It's really funny. It's really funny, really fun. If you don't like enemies to lovers, this isn't one to read, and if you get annoyed by things like prank wars or anything like that, then also don't read it. But yeah, fun, lighthearted. There's a lot of forced proximity, there's only one bed, that kind of stuff going on, so yeah, super fun. Then I read The Brightest by Helen Huang. I do have a copy of it somewhere, but I can't dig it out, it's hidden. This is the second book in the Kiss Quotient series. So this follows Kai, who is mentioned in the Kiss Quotient series, and he is autistic, and his family kind of feel like he's not trying to find love, and they're kind of worried about him not finding love. So his mother flies back to Vietnam to find a girl for him, and she meets this lady who's a cleaner in the hotel that she's in Vietnam, and there's something about this girl that she really likes, so she agrees to pay this cleaner to come over to the US to meet Kai, to live with him, and hopefully seduce him. And the cleaner's kind of feeling a bit icky about it, but she needs the money, so she decides to do it. It's about as icky as it sounds. I really liked the first Kiss Quotient book. I loved that book. This book I despised. I think I gave it 1 star, maybe 2. I thought the autism rep was really, really good. I loved Kai. Kai was amazing. I thought he was just so good, and it's the way that he worries that he can't love anybody because he doesn't understand his emotions, doesn't recognize them, is such an important thing. But everybody else in this book is absolute trash. I do not support this romance. I hate his family. I hate that people say this book is good and that they love it, because I think it's really problematic. So basically, they're all worried about him not finding love, right? And that's about it. They're not concerned about the fact that he's cutting himself off from family, or why he maybe thinks he can't find love, or what's going on with him. They don't really show any true concern for Kai until it affects the girl that they bring over to seduce him. Can we see how that's a problem? All of the neurotypical characters in this book constantly complain about Kai, talk about him being weird and strange, but never try to get to know him, never try to do anything. And the love interest in this book is actually told that he is autistic, and in her side of the story she says like, oh, I don't know what that means, and then doesn't think to look that up. If you've just been told something about someone you're supposed to be trying to seduce, someone you're living with, why would you not immediately go look that up? And it's the way that it's kind of treated as no one should have had to do any of this, it's all Kai's fault, he's the problem, is just so problematic. Like, nobody is ever kind of vilified for the things they do to Kai in this book, and they don't try to help him until it affects Esme, the female character. So this book is absolute trash. Please don't read it. Like, I actually would not want people to read this, because the way Kai is treated is a way a lot of autistic people are treated, and it's very harmful, and I don't like that this book portrays it as a good thing. Okay, then I read Such a Fun Age by Kylie Reid. Yes, Kylie Reid. So this is a literary fiction book. It follows a black nanny to a white family, and one day the white family has some kind of emergency and they call up this nanny and ask her if she can babysit their daughter for a little bit while they're sorting things out. So she arrives, she's been out to a party with her friends and she's a little bit tipsy. She's dressed in her party clothes, but the parents say it's fine, and she decides to take the little girl out to the shops to get her out of the house and distract her from the emergency happening, which the parents agree to. But while she's in the shops with this little girl, the security guards stop her and try to accuse her of having kidnapped the girl, and basically won't let them go, try to call the police until the girl's father arrives and says that that is their nanny. And it's basically about what happens in the aftermath of this event. So it's told from the perspective of the nanny and also from the mother, and it's a very interesting book about the kind of white saviorism of the mother, who is trying to insist that she tells her side of the story and gets this publicized, whereas the black nanny she wants to just let it go. She said that, you know, this happens a lot to her and she doesn't want to make a big deal out of it. It doesn't benefit her to do that. She wants to let it go, but the white mother is very, very insistent on this, and it's basically following the nanny just trying to move on with her life and finding a romance with someone, and the mother being very stuck on this and being very obsessed with being an ally, and she keeps doing these things like, well, I've got a black friend, let me show her I've got a black friend, kind of stuff. So it is very topical, very interesting, but I will say nothing really happens. I was reading it kind of waiting for something, waiting for the book to kind of make a point. It doesn't really, it's kind of dry, a bit boring, it's very literary fiction, and it just wasn't for me. I think I gave it 3 stars because I just kind of needed more substance to it. But I do think it's an interesting book to read if that kind of thing interested you, and if you are a big literary fiction reader, maybe you'll enjoy it more. Then we have Life Ceremony by Sayaka Murata. This is a collection of her short stories, and some of these short stories are linked to her other books, namely Earthlings, I believe. When I read them, they were very reminiscent of things happening in Earthlings, so I do think they're linked. These short stories have all been published at different points in Japan, but are now being collected as Life Ceremonies and published in the UK. It's one where I love it. I think it's such a good series of short stories, and they work really well together, but you have to really appreciate Sayaka Murata's writing to be able to enjoy this and understand what you're getting into, because it is kind of horror, and it's weird. So I guess I can say some of the triggers about this book because they are in the description. And so there's cannibalism. One of the short stories is about how after death in this alternate universe / in the future, it's kind of unclear, after your death you're kind of cooked and people eat you as a way of appreciating your life, stuff like that. And another one is about there being stuff made out of human products, so you can get like human skin lampshades and human bone cutlery and human hair clothes. But each of them is kind of talking about the taboo-ness of these things. So if that kind of stuff is going to give you the heebie-jeebies, don't read these. But I will say it's quite easy if you find yourself getting uncomfortable with a certain sort of short story, you can skip on to the next one. But that is kind of a common theme among these books, because that's a theme that Sayaka Murata plays with. So if you've only read Convenience Store Woman, I would be careful reading Life Ceremonies, because it's a very different vibe. Convenience Store Woman is very contemporary, very literary fiction, whereas Earthlings and Life Ceremonies is horror. Speculative fiction is very different. So look up trigger warnings if you need to, and be prepared to perhaps need to skip some. Next we have Delilah Green Doesn't Care, which I can't show you because I've already unhauled it, so that's probably a sign. I think I gave this one 3 stars. This is a romance, it's a sapphic romance. So Delilah Green grew up in a very unusual household. Her mother died when she was young, her dad remarried to a woman who had a teenage daughter, and they grew up together, and then her father died while she was still a teenager, and her stepmother then had to raise her and her teenage daughter, who were a similar age, together, and she's always felt this kind of resentment that she wasn't treated equally, she wasn't treated well by her stepmother or her sister. So at 18 she kind of ran away, cut contact. She is now a photographer, and in the future she gets contacted by her sister asking if she will come back to photograph her wedding. And when she gets there, she finds out that she's got a lot to photograph. There's a whole wedding week happening, and she realises that there's a spark between her and her sister's best friend, who is one of the bridesmaids. It's okay. I really didn't like Delilah. I thought she acted like a child. And what I didn't like about it was, you know, you get a lot of people making child decisions in real life. That's completely normal. But I didn't like how Delilah kept going on about how mature she was and how much of an adult she was, and then kept doing these really immature things, and it was never kind of pointed out that they were immature or incorrect, and I didn't like that. So I just didn't really like her. I loved Claire, the love interest. I thought she was amazing. I would happily read more books about her, but I just didn't like Delilah. So yeah, it is one where you might enjoy her more than I did, so if you're interested, still give it a go. Then we have The Stand-In by Lily Chu. This is another romance, and this one is a completely no steam romance. So if you love adult romance but don't want the steam, this is one to pick up. They don't do anything more than kiss in the book, I think. And this one is about a young woman whose mother is currently in a care home, and she really wants to get her into a better one that has better facilities and is much nicer, but she can't afford it. She's working this like horrible job that she doesn't like. And then one day she's in a coffee shop and people mistake her for this Chinese celebrity. The celebrity finds out and approaches her because this woman is like a near double for the celebrity, and she offers for her to be her stand-in for public events so that this woman can have a break, basically, because she has anxiety. But she is also seen a lot with her male co-star, so he has to be in on the fake stand-in, obviously, and it is about her and him kind of working together to create this fake identity and falling in love. It's good. I gave it 4 stars. I found it sweet. I found it funny. It's a little bit obvious. Like, the big plot twist I saw from a mile away, but it didn't ruin the book for me. And I really enjoyed the romance and the way it developed. And yeah, it is a good romance. Especially if you don't want a steamy romance, this is one to pick up. It is really sweet, kind of funny at times, and I really enjoyed the female characters' friendships as well. So yeah, recommend it. Next is one of my favourite books I've read recently, and that is Window Shopping by Tessa Bailey. This is my favourite Tessa Bailey book by far, and it's really tiny, so it's coming up to Christmas season-ish now. I mean, a lot of you will want to go past Halloween before you read Christmas books, but when you are looking for Christmas books, consider this one. This is a typical Tessa Bailey steamy romance, but I found it, I don't know, more thoughtful than some of her other books, having more plot than some of her other books. So this one follows 2 characters. One is the owner of a department store I think it's in New York, and it's a family kind of owned, but he's the main owner because he bought them out when they were in financial trouble. So he kind of runs things, but he still tries to keep his family on the board to keep them happy. And he is looking for a new window dresser. And our female main character is a convict who's recently been released from prison, and it's always been her dream to be a window dresser. So one day she's standing outside this department store window and is looking at it, and she's kind of unimpressed, says it on her face. So a man standing next to her asks her how she would improve it. Turns out it is the store owner, and he offers her a job as the new window dresser. And it's about how she kind of is dealing with not feeling good enough anymore because she went to prison and because of the mistakes that she made, and about him trying to stand up to his family, be the man he's supposed to be, and also both of them trying to accept the feelings that they're starting to feel for each other. I loved it. I thought it was really emotional, really sweet, really funny, and I thought the romance was really believable. So yeah, favourite Tessa Bailey so far. Then in June, I changed things up a little bit and we went for a YA romance. This is A Little Bit Country. This is an ARC, so it's an advanced reader's copy. I was given it free by the publisher in exchange for honest reviews. here's my honest review. This is a YA romance, so no steam, and, well, was there steam? Actually, I can't remember that. Don't take my word for that. There might have been a little bit of steam, but like YA appropriate steam. And this one is about two teenage boys. So we have this young man who is a wannabe country star. He wants to be like the biggest gay country star in America. And then you have this guy whose grandma used to be associated with Wanda, who is kind of Dolly Parton in this world. And it's basically about how she had a feud with Wanda many, many years ago and is now penniless basically. She died, and now his family hates Wonder World, which is the Dollywood style theme park. But he really wants to be a chef, and he gets offered a job at Wonder World in the kitchens, and so he secretly takes this job. And while he's there, he meets this young man who is working in the musical show at Wonder World, and sparks begin to fly. But they are both keeping secrets from each other about Wanda, their relationship with Wanda, and all that kind of stuff. So I would say it keeps being portrayed as this like really light-hearted contemporary, but I found it super emotional. This guy's family is really homophobic, and so there's a lot of talk about that and about how he doesn't want to come out and wants to keep the relationship a secret because of that. So take that into consideration. If that's a trigger for you, don't read this book, but it is a good YA romance and I did really enjoy it. It's just not as fun and funny as I was expecting it to be. I have also started to read the Bridgerton series. So I read the first book, The Duke and I will say I was loving this book. I was super duper into it until that bit at the end. There's like so not trying to give any spoilers, but there is basically a sexual assault scene at the end of the book, and it's never portrayed as sexual assault in the book, and it's kind of forgiven and pushed aside, and no real consequences ever occur because of this, and it's really icky. But up until that, it is a really good book, but it's one of those where I kind of don't recommend the first book because of that issue. I will say it is the romance leading up to that is better in the book, but the way the sexual assault scene happens in the TV show is a lot better handled. So take what you can from that. But again, even the TV show is not really treated like sexual assault, even though it is. So, you know, not great either. But yeah, it's really fun until that bit, and it definitely got me into reading the rest of the series, and I'm now really enjoying the series. Then we have Front Desk by Kelly Yang. This is a middle grade contemporary. This is about a young girl whose parents have immigrated with her from China, I want to say. It doesn't say on the back, but I think it's from China. And they have moved there because they believe that America is this land of fortune. They're going to have really great jobs, make loads of money, but they are discovering they're living in a lot of hardship. Her parents agree to be the managers of a motel, and they basically get paid a certain amount of money each week, and they have to look after the hotel, do all the cleaning, do the keys, all that kind of stuff. And she decides to work on the front desk to help them because they're really not making very much money. And it's about her experience being this front desk worker at the motel, the regulars that live there all the time, what they're like, about some of the bad things that happen, but also about her belief that she can do anything and trying to change what's happening because of that belief. And it's a really uplifting, really good book. Highly recommend it, especially for children who love to write, because the main character is really big on writing. It's definitely one that I'd recommend for children of the appropriate age for this book. I loved it. I gave it 5 stars. I want to read the rest of the books in the series because I do think it's amazing, and it's also based loosely on, or not even loosely, I know it is based on Kelly Yang's experiences growing up. Then we have another Tessa Bailey, Hook, Line and Sinker. This is the second book in the, what series? Does it say anywhere? I can't remember the name of the series. I mean, It Happened One Summer is the first book. Maybe that's the name of the series, but I think it's the Something Sisters series. It's a duology about 2 sisters. This is about the younger sister, and she is wanting to get into movie music. And she's working with a production company on a movie, and she convinces them to set the movie in the town where her sister lives, where the first book was set, because she thinks it'll be really atmospheric there, and she also just really wants to go back to see her sister. And so they move the movie there to be set there, and instead of staying in a hotel, she decides to stay with the best friend of her sister's now husband in his flat because he has a spare bedroom. And they've been best friends, talking back and forth for months since they first met in the first book, and he secretly has this massive crush on her. So it's about what happens as they live together, fall in love. And it's also about him dealing with how, as a child and a teenager and a young adult, he's been really over sexualized. He's always been this ladies' man. People assume he's always sleeping around, and if anyone finds out he's dating someone, he thinks they're just using them. And it's about him processing that, dealing with that, trying to break that association. So it's difficult. I liked the romance and I liked the male main character. My problem with this book is that the female main character had no agency and made no decisions outside of whether it would impact him, and had no real growth except for with him. So it's not a very good book for the female character, and that's why I find it difficult. I was expecting to like this one more than the first book. I did enjoy the first book more, but this series is not my favourite from Tessa Bailey. I love the Hot and Hammered series. That's my favourite if you want a series from her. But obviously my favourite book from her is Window Shopping. But yeah, this one, it was a bit icky. I didn't really love the experiences of the female main character, so I'm not really sure I'd recommend the series from her, but it's one of those where maybe you'll enjoy it more than I did. Then I read The Viscount Who Loved Me, which is the second Bridgerton book, and it is the one about Anthony and Kate, so it fits in with the second series. So this one is very, very different to the TV show. So if you liked what happened in the TV show, you'll probably not really enjoy the book, but I think the book handles everything better. So in this book, you have Anthony, who is the Viscount, who is looking for a wife, and he believes that he's going to die young because his father did. So he's kind of looking for someone who will be able to sort of live independently after he dies, like his mother has, and also someone who's intelligent and beautiful because he wants to be able to have a good conversation. And then you have Kate, who is verging on spinsterhood, and her sister, I think they only have one season to be able to find a match, so she decides to push her sister and get her sister a good match in the hopes that she might be able to get some support and will then become a spinster and a governess and support herself. And so Anthony starts to court her sister, but sparks start to fly between Anthony and Kate. This one is interesting. It's kind of marked as enemies to lovers, but I'm not really sure it's that enemies. I did enjoy it. It's not my favourite. In fact, it's probably my least favourite of the Bridgerton books that I've read. I'm not a big fan of enemies to lovers, and I thought that Kate and Anthony didn't have a lot in common. Didn't really see why they'd like each other once they were married, but it's fun. It's easy to read. I will say Bridgertons are very easy to read. So if you like sort of a brain-off romance, this is one. And then continuing the theme, I read An Offer from a Gentleman by Julia Quinn, which is the third book. This is where the series order deviates. This one is about Benedict and Sophie, whereas the third season of Bridgerton is going to be about Penelope and Colin. So this one is about Benedict, as I already said, and in the beginning of the book, Benedict is at a ball, and there is a young woman that he meets in this masquerade ball who never takes her mask off, that he basically falls in love with, and he spends the rest of his time trying to find someone who will match up to this young woman he speaks to, who he fell in love with. And the young woman is Sophie. Sophie is the bastard daughter of an earl who has never been acknowledged as his daughter and has always just been his ward. And after he passes away, she has a stepmother and two stepsisters, and after he passes away, he says that the stepmother has to continue to raise her in order to get her full monetary allowance, and also provides a dowry for her. But her stepmother keeps that a secret. She tells her that she was given money to keep her, but does not say that she has to treat her equally, and does not tell her about her dowry. And so she is basically kept as a slave in the book. And when her stepmother finds out that she attended this ball in secret, she is kicked out. And then years later, Benedict meets her at a party, not knowing that it's her, and she's working there as a maid. And so at this party, she is kind of being attacked by a group of men, and Benedict saves her and takes her to his house. It's very good. This is probably my favourite of the Bridgertons so far, and I really love them. I love Sophie. She's such a sweetheart. The growth that she goes on and the self-belief is just beautiful. And Benedict is so soft and so lovely in the book. He's not as I don't know what word I'm looking for. He's not as much of a rake in the book as he is in the show, as they call them. And I really enjoyed that, and I loved his artistic side being shown more in the book. So yeah, it's a really good, really sweet one, and if you love a kind of gradual, slow romance, this is one for you. Then I read Chef's Kiss by TJ Alexander. This is another adult romance, and this one is between this female chef and her non-binary kitchen manager. So this the chef has been working for this recipe book / blog slash magazine, I think, for a while, developing recipes, and then basically their sales are declining because people aren't really buying recipe books as much anymore, and they decide to pivot to video form. And during this pivot, someone makes some videos with the kitchen manager, and they start to go viral, and that's where the big hit is, and they start working together on these videos, but they kind of hate each other, or not each other. They both have a crush on each other, and so the chef decides to kind of be mean to the kitchen manager so that they don't end up in love. And honestly, the chef read very coded autistic, but also once the chef comes out as non-binary to the rest of the staff, discrimination starts to occur, and it's about how they deal with it and the friendship that forms and the romance that forms from there. This is good, it's fun, it's interesting, but it was just kind of bland. I didn't love it as much as I wanted to. It felt a bit too convenient, the ending, but it is a good romance, and especially if you're looking for a romance with trans characters and non-binary characters, this is one to pick up. Lots of good discussions happen in it, but yeah, I just didn't love it. I think it was about a 3-star, maybe 4-star. It was okay, would recommend it still, but it's not one of my favourites. Then I just wanted to quickly talk about The Dog and the Cat by Dominique Duong. This I picked up at Comic-Con. It's just a really tiny little zine, basically, that is available on Etsy, and I loved it. This is a sapphic romance between the dog and the cat from the Chinese zodiac. So if you don't know the story, in the Chinese zodiac, the cat is betrayed by the rat, who is meant to wake the cat up for the race to get onto the zodiac, and the rat does not wake her up, so she misses it. And this is about the dog and the cat afterwards, who are humans, kind of forming this friendship and this romance. Every year they meet and have dinner, and it's about them developing this relationship through that. It's very short and sweet, but I just adored it, and the art style is amazing. The design differences between cat and dog were just lovely. I loved it, and I really want to buy some more from her Etsy store because it's just amazing. And then we have Check Please. This is the first book in the Check Please series. I think it's called that. I don't think there's another name for it. I think it's quite a short series. I think the second book is the only other one. I'm not sure about that though. This is about a figure skater who then goes to play hockey at college, and he becomes part of the hockey team, and it's kind of him like following his first 2 years on the hockey team, I think. And yeah, it's good, it's funny, it's really sweet. It's kind of told through vlog form because he's a vlogger, which is really funny, and it's very bro-y. Like, all the boys in the team are very bro-y, and there's a lot of that going on, but it's really fun. I really enjoyed it. I think I gave it 4 stars, and I really want to read the next one. And the final book I want to talk to you about is My Gila Vacation by Tessa Bailey, which, if you have seen my stories about this, you'll know. I think I gave this 2 stars, maybe 3, based purely on vibes. This book, my goodness, I do not believe Tessa Bailey wrote this book to be taken seriously. I can't believe that, because it's so wild. This man is so horny, basically. Every thought is too much, honestly. Like, he needs some water. Someone needs to get that man some water. The female main character is great. I liked her. She was really sweet, but the guy is kind of creepy at times and a bit weird, and it's just a bit much. The decisions they make are questionable, and chapter 18 needs to be burnt. Chapter 18 is a choice. That's all I have to say. Also, who is this man on the cover? That's not how the man is described in the book. He has long hair in the book. I don't know, this book is just, it's funny. If you don't take it seriously, you will enjoy it, but it's not a very serious book, and it's very wild, and it's just kind of bizarre. This is like, it's kind of a murder mystery, so it's about a woman who is a middle school teacher, I want to say, maybe elementary school, and she goes on vacation with her brother, and when they arrive at their vacation home, they find the owner of the home dead, and they call the police. The police kind of brushed off, aren't investigating it properly, so the family decide to hire he's a bounty hunter, but he used to be a police officer, that's why they hire him, which is this guy, and he comes to investigate what happened, and she decides to insert herself into the case, so he has to help her, or has to let her help investigate. It's a great concept, not executed well, but I don't know if she ever really intended to execute it well. It's just bizarre. Read it for the vibes if you want, but feel free to skip it if you feel like it. So I'm sure this is a very long video, and I probably rambled a lot. I tried to go as quickly as I could, but hopefully you found that all interesting. And yeah, that is it. I will hopefully be able to update more frequently now. We won't have to have a massive wrap up at the end of every few months. So thank you so much for watching. If you like this video, please give it a like and consider subscribing to see more content from me. All of my social media links are down in the description below, and if you'd like to leave me a comment to let me know you are here, leave me a magnifying glass emoji in the comments below.